Hi, I'm Andy Weibel, and welcome to Timely Topics. Today we have a face you may recognize, but hasn't been on the air for a little while on MCC TV. It's David Takitaki. Welcome to the show, David Takitaki.
Thanks so much, Andy. It's great to be back on MCC TV.
Glad to have you back here, and I want to talk to you about Iran. But first, let's get a little bit of what you're doing now. You're a union representative for the United Food and Commercial Workers.
Yes, Local 951. We represent retail workers. My area stretches from Grand Haven all the way up to Manistee, 16 different stores, Rite Aids, Plum stores, and the like, just enforcing the contract and making sure they get the rights they deserve as working people. So.
Oh, great. So so you mentioned a couple of the stores, Rite Aid and Plums. Any others?
Meijer is our major client. Yeah.
All right, Meijer. All right. So that's good to know when you're shopping to talk to the workers. They probably know you.
Absolutely.
All right, good. And you're also an instructor of political science here at the college.
Absolutely. Still teaching international relations and comparative world government here for MCC.
Oh, good. So. I'm glad you're still around doing that.
I'm happy to be here.
All right. So let's talk now a little bit about this Iran deal. It's been in the news, but first off, maybe you can say, why is this important why did Obama want to do this? He's the one that brokered it, or his administration, and why might Iran want a deal like this?
Sure.
And then what does it say?
Well, with all credit to the Obama administration, they didn't do this alone. It was an initiative put forward not only by the Obama administration, our own State Department, Secretary Kerry, but the actors that were really involved are the P5+1, the permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council, the United States, United Kingdom, France, China, and Russia, plus one in this case, Germany. All had critical seats at the negotiating table, and the principal interest is nuclear non-proliferation. Iran had a series of facilities, centrifuges, and was looking at powering up what's known as a heavy water reactor that would give them the capacity to either enrich uranium or process plutonium to the point where they could eventually construct a nuclear weapon. And there are a variety of regional security interests that, and the cause of non-proliferation in general, that have prompted the P5+1 to pursue these things. Iran, of course, has an interest in acquiring nuclear weapons for their own personal security. Obviously, they have some adversaries in the regime and a number of historical tensions with their neighbors. To which the acquisition of a nuclear weapon might give them an additional measure of added security.
Do some of their people that they don't like,
absolutely,
or countries they don't like, do they have nuclear weapons?
Immediately, yes. Israel does possess nuclear weapons.
Okay.
They are not generally noted as having publicly declared that they possess nuclear weapons under several of the treaties that would otherwise dictate they should do so, but it is common knowledge in the international community that Israel possesses nuclear weapons.
Okay.
The nearest other neighbor who is going to possess nuclear weapons would be Pakistan. And India, though their conflicts have generally involved each other and don't involve Iran at this point.
Okay.
So, but Iran has a vested national interest, as does any modern country, in having the means to protect itself, and probably most importantly, the means to deter others from launching incursions into their territory or otherwise interfering with their own agenda.
Now, does Iran say we want nuclear weapons before this deal? Was that their goal?
It has never been a publicly stated goal that Iran is pursuing nuclear arsenals. And while, again, what is stated publicly and pursued privately or even rationally is two different things, and you do have to read the tea leaves when it comes to these elements of international diplomacy and strategy. Iran has not stated publicly that, yes, we're going to build a nuclear weapon and it's going to be glorious. But they have pursued a domestic nuclear agenda that has included building capacity. Now, of course, they say their interests are primarily in terms of energy and in terms of the medicinal or even instructional uses of these elements of their nuclear capacity. But do they provide a route by which Iran could eventually develop a nuclear weapon? Yes.
You might not know this, but just curious from what you're saying, is there, can you tell the difference between nuclear, making nuclear power and making nuclear bombs? Can you tell a difference?
Actually, you can.
Okay.
The benefit here is that the two principal facilities that have been highlighted in both the Iraq deal, which is, I believe at this point, I'm also referred to as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JPOC or something like that, are the facilities at Natanz and the facility at Fordo. Those are uranium processing facilities. And what they allow Iran to do is to enrich uranium to one degree or another. Now, Iran had been enriching uranium to a maximum quality of about 20%. That is insufficient to build a nuclear weapon. You have to enrich uranium down to about a 90% purity if you're going to try to build a nuclear weapon. So they had not been carrying out that kind of enrichment procedure as yet. But they had something on the order of 19,000 centrifuges at Natanz, about 2,700 at Fordo, that would give them the ability to, over time, increase that enrichment percentage to the point where it could become feasible fissile material for a bomb. One of the reasons that that heavy water reactor was of such significant interest is that that is a means by which one can arrive at nuclear weapon grade materials through plutonium. Heavy water reactors, as their fuel is spent, the leftover material is high enough in quality in terms of plutonium that it too can be used in terms of constructing a nuclear bomb. Now, that facility at Arak hadn't come online yet, but it was a major bone of contention between the P5+1 and the Iranians as to what are we going to do with this facility. Originally, the P5+1 wanted it to be completely dismantled. They wanted it to be, just taken apart and removed. Iran wanted to maintain it in some capacity or another, and so that was a sticking point in the negotiations for quite some time.
So where is Iran getting their nuclear supplies?
That is a pretty diverse supply chain, and it's not something that's necessarily known publicly. Obviously, there are parts of Northern Africa that have been notorious for providing yellow cake uranium to interested parties all around the world. And their own it is unknown, at least publicly at this point in time, whether or not there are domestic resources for this. I know that they have engaged in mining for uranium, and mining and milling for uranium within their own sovereign borders at this point. But as to the quality or quantity of those materials, that's not information that's available, at least to a political scientist in the Midwest anyway.
Right, so, maybe the CIA knows
right.
better, but they're not telling us.
Not
right?
me anyway.
All right. So let's get a little more on the agreement. And what does the agreement restrict Iran from doing? And how will we know they're abiding by the agreement?
Sure. Well, let's start out by talking about what does Iran need to build a bomb? And again, we're talking about uranium that has been enriched to that 90% quantity or better, plus the ability to do additional research, ballistics testing, things along those lines. And the other alternative is plutonium from basically spent fuel casings out of a heavy water reactor. Those are the two key ways in which they can get that core fissile material required to build a nuclear weapon. The first thing that is a part of the agreement is that Iran is going to reduce the number of centrifuges at their Natanz facility, which is where most of them are, over 19,000, down to a capacity of about 5,000, a little over 5,000. The rest of the centrifuges that are on site are going to go under IAEA supervision. They're not going to be destroyed, they're going to be observed. And Iran is going to scale down their enrichment practices from something on the order of 20% to something on the order of about 3.6%. That allows them to use that uranium for most of the domestic uses that one would be interested in using uranium for, and keeps them well away from the threshold that would be required to make it essentially weaponized.
Okay.
The 2,000 plus centrifuges that are at the Fordo facility are being taken offline completely. Only Natanz moving forward will have any uranium enrichment capacities. The Arak heavy water reactor will not be dismantled. It's going to be redesigned collaboratively between the Iranian government and the IAEA plus the P5+1, so that it can no longer produce the kind of fuel, it will no longer produce the kind of spent fuel necessary to develop a bomb. And Iran has agreed that it not only will not stockpile the kind of heavy water necessary to process that reactor, either before or after when the reactor itself comes online, but that all of the spent fuel will be shipped out of the country under the IAEA's guidance and the observation of the P5+1. The agreement actually calls for a joint commission to be established between Iran and elements of the EU and the EU+3. So that is who's going to have kind of the overriding authority to monitor the agreement moving forward. It's also, if there is a dispute concerning the agreement, they appeal it to that joint commission moving forward as a part of the joint comprehensive plan of action.
So these groups, the IAEA, I guess, the
International Atomic Energy Agency.
All right, good, good. And the EU and other countries involved, will they be there all the time on site monitoring this, or will it be occasional inspections? Or
the IAEA gets monitoring at the vast majority of, basically continuous monitoring at the vast majority of the facilities that Iran holds. I believe it's specifically some of the uranium mining they have access to, but they're not continuously monitoring those particular facilities. And what's most I guess relevant about where the IAEA can and cannot go is that they have the ability to access what are being deemed as suspicious sites. All right, they have, by the letters of the agreement, 24-hour access to any site that is deemed suspicious through the IAEA.
That means 24-hour day.
Well, no, that means access within 24 hours.
Ah,
okay. So. Now, what's relevant to that, and is one of the things that's caught a lot of attention in the media, is the fact that if Iran contests the idea that this is not a suspicious site or facility, then the IAEA needs to be given access within 24 days, not 24 hours. All right. And that delay does raise some red flags for folks.
You can move things.
Well, you can, but remember, we're dealing with radioactive materials. And that is actually one of the reasons why that 24-day window doesn't concern a lot of the experts who are working in the field, because it takes between 6 months, sometimes multiple years, to effectively cleanse a site where these things are going on.
That the radiation lingers,
exactly.
Could be tested for.
To the degree that would prevent a trained IAEA inspection team from being able to determine, yes, something like this was going on here. And that's why, again, the 24-day window doesn't intimidate or otherwise overly concern a lot of the people who are working in this field as experts. I think, again, it provides Iran a degree of comfort, and also Iran as a sovereign nation has their own capacity to maintain both their secrets and their domestic military and things along those lines. And there are things that perhaps, like any sovereign country, they might not want people immediately seeing. If it's not nuclearly relevant, it's not covered under this agreement,
right.
Which is why I believe they fought for that 24-day, stipulation within the IAEA inspection time frames.
Interesting. So what if they say no? What if they don't allow some inspections in areas in 24 hours or 24 days?
Right. Well,
what happens?
The official progression would be that the IAEA would register a complaint with the Joint Commission. The Joint Commission would then determine whether or not the agreement had been breached. And depending on when that happens, the consequences vary, because both sides get a good bit out of this agreement. We've talked a little bit about the constrictions and things that are being placed on Iran. Let's flesh that out a little bit so we can understand exactly what's going to happen when the agreement is breached. So Iran has agreed, again, not only to not stockpile heavy water and to decrease their capacity at these two key sites in Natanz and Fordo, but they've also agreed to essentially suspend any kind of research nigh indefinitely. They've they will fall under the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty at this. They will then have the basically the continual idea that they're going to ship out any kind of spent fuel. All of that's kind of a continuing part of the agreement that really doesn't have a horizon. All right. If they were to be found, let's say they don't comply with any of this at all, then they don't get any of the things that they're looking for out of the agreement, which are specifically sanctions relief, the release of frozen assets abroad, and again, a relaxing of the economic embargoes that have been placed on them, both unilaterally by some countries and multilaterally through the body of the United Nations. That's what they're looking for.
This is not a small amount of money.
No,
right?
not at all. The estimate right now is that should they comply with the agreement, and should the IAEA find them to be in continual compliance, there are about $100 billion in frozen assets abroad, mostly foreign currency reserves and the like, that Iran would then have access to. Moreover, the petroleum embargo on Iran has been crippling to their economy. It's estimated they've lost something on the order of $160 billion in revenue just in the last couple of years. And Iran is not such a robust country that the kind of petroleum embargo is having a moderate effect. It's having a severe effect on their economy.
It's such a big part of their economy. But we shouldn't think that Iran is a real backwards country in terms of its economy. I mean,
no, it's as developed an economy as you'll find in most of the world.
Yeah.
What is key to know, however, is that the comprehensive sanctions that have been placed on Iran have prevented it from advancing even things like its civilian air infrastructure. They can't get the parts they need to repair their planes on a regular basis, to the point where that is one of the stipulations listed in the agreement, is that they get access to maintenance parts for their domestic air flights, things along those lines. So the Iranians have a significant economic interest in complying with this agreement. It allows them to not only then market their petroleum to the world, but increase potential foreign investment at that point in time in Iranian markets. To ship more Iranian markets to more Iranian goods to some of the most valuable markets overseas. Free up again that close to $100 billion in frozen assets overseas, and as they hope, and as really the rest of the world hopes, it is the first step towards a diplomatic and economic re-engagement and reintegration of Iran into the world.
Right.
Where they've been a pariah nation for some time.
Is to have them economically dependent upon the rest of the world. And
Exactly.
hence, why would you want to engage in war with someone you're trading with?
Right.
Also, I mean, I guess some might think with this agreement, hey, is this like Cuba? Are we going to have relations where now I can go on vacation to Iran?
That is not something that I think the State Department would advise just yet.
Okay.
I can't read their travel advisories psychically at range.
Right.
But that's the nation as it stands right now. Does have a diverse population with a variety of different interests. They have probably the most progressive president they've had in quite some time. Admittedly, that's not saying a lot.
Right.
But their principal form of government is still at this point in time governed through their Council of Guardians. It is still primarily theocratic.
Right.
And there are customs and things like that Americans might not necessarily feel comfortable with going abroad for. But as to the security threat to Americans, if there is we'll say a relaxation of the tensions between these two countries over time. The Iranian people have, in large part, individually, not held dramatic grudges against the West. As individuals, they are citizens of the world like the rest of us are.
So while some of the leaders may, it's not represented in the general population.
No. I mean, like anyone, and you'll see elements here in our own population who have strong opinions about one thing or another. But again, as a general population, Iranians are human beings. They want many of the same things that we all
want. A lot of
want.
Iranians live here and have family there.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's a huge connection, obviously. So maybe, but not right away.
Yeah. I'm not gonna try to.
Might be a baby step towards a larger one. One concern, though, is that the leadership of Iran does not really like the United States, nor some of its allies, especially Israel. Why don't we start with the United States? Why the friction, or what has led to the friction between the United States and Iran? And our previous president even called it, one of the axis of evil.
Yeah. Well, there has been, really since the Iranian Revolution in the late 1970s, a history of antagonism between the United States and Iran. We were very vocal and direct, explicit supporters of the Shah in Iran before he was toppled in the Student Rebellion that set up the current form of government. And when you back the guy that they rebel against, that does not set the table well, for what's going on.
Sure.
Then, of course, you have U.S. involvement either directly or indirectly with things like the Iran-Iraq War. I mean, you have the entire Iran-Contra issue with the hostages, taken later at that point. There's a tremendous amount of history between these two countries.
Well, we supported Iraq in the Iran-Iraq War. Why were they fighting each other, just briefly? I mean, I'm sure there's a long history there.
Yeah, I mean, there is a tremendous and long history, and there are significant both regional, economic, and religious roots to that conflict. You have in Iran a population that has been predominantly and regularly Shia. You've got in Iraq a diverse population, but at that point in time was guided by Sunnis and the early Baathists. You've got a tremendous amount of difficulty in maintaining regional stability across the board in this area, and it has been that way realistically since the end of the Ottoman Empire. So when we look at where Iran is today as regards the United States, as regards the West, I think any scholar in the area would say they have enough reasonable justification to be concerned about what the intentions of the West are towards Iran. And there are plenty of people in Iran who do have, we'll say, negative intentions towards the West. Israel has probably been the biggest touch point of Middle Eastern strife since it was, kind of founded by, the United Nations in 1947 and 48.
Sure.
Many Arabs and many people who are, devout Muslims saw that as Western intervention in a land seizure displacing Palestinian people. It's well known that the land had been at one point in time home to the Jewish people 2,000 years ago, but had been pretty continuously inhabited by Palestinian people for the last 1,500 years.
Who are not necessarily Christian.
Yeah, who are not, well, I mean, who actually the Palestinians have a diversity of religions. I mean, some of them are Christian, some of them are Muslim, So that conflict and the West's kind of absolute support of Israel, both in its creation and in its continued actions in terms of the Palestinian conflict, has set up a lot of tension with Iran.
Iran has supported Hamas and Hezbollah.
Yes.
And how has that support, what is their intention in supporting Hamas and Hezbollah?
Well, if you look at both of the organizations, Hamas and Hezbollah have basically put forward an agenda that is a pro-Arab, pro-Islamic agenda. They are looking at achieving not only regional stability, but regional gains for their own people. And that puts them directly at odds with Israel on a number of different matters. Both organizations, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in the Palestinian territories, are capable of governance and kind of peaceful relations. And yet both of them possess either affiliated members or kind of subgroups in affiliation that are also capable of acts of terror. And that's part of the concern, I think the justified concern, when it comes to if Iran, as a result of this deal, gets their hands on either increased revenues through petroleum or general market sales or this money abroad, where is that money going to go?
Is it going to go to fighting?
Could it be filtered out? And I think that really brings us back to one of the main issues regarding the nuclear question, is Iran's possession as a sovereign state of a nuclear weapon a major threat to the United States? In my estimation, it's not. Because as a sovereign state, the possession of a nuclear weapon, to use it offensively in the world today, they were going to try to go after Israel. For what Israel has an advanced nuclear, capacity of its own, it would invite catastrophic destruction and turn pretty much every Western nuclear power against you simultaneously.
Right, and
go ahead.
Iran is not crazy,
No.
irrational country.
No. Their interest in possessing a nuclear weapon is primarily in that it would prevent any other country from engaging in a domestic war to try to either invade or topple their regime. That's the interest in them possessing a nuclear weapon.
Then why do they, I mean, at least the Obama administration has in Israel a two-state solution. I don't hear that from Iran. It's like death to Israel, and we hope Israel is gone totally. If I was an Israeli, that would be of concern.
Yes.
And so what would they like to see in Israel?
Well, again, it depends on who you ask in Iran. They're just like here. There are members within the Council of Guardians who play to the interests and sensibilities of a militant fraction of their population, who would like to see something like death to Israel. Just as there are people in the United States today who would say bomb, bomb, bomb Iran. There are, I think, the temperature of the vast majority of the domestic Iranians is that they want peace, and they also want security. They don't want to worry that Israel or the United States is going to launch an incursion to try to topple a theocracy, which would be absolutely abhorrent to us, but that they have either supported or lived under for quite some time.
Sure.
So I think that is the general temperature, and that's also one of the reasons why I believe Iran is moving forward with this at this time. The breakout period, and that's one of the crucial elements of the deal. We, as in the United States and the IAEA, estimate that if Iran were to basically crank up their facilities, they could have a nuclear weapon within 60 to 90 days.
Wow, that's pretty short time.
Yeah, that's short term. And so the thought is, if they had wanted a nuclear weapon,
when they've already got
they could have maneuvered themselves to achieve that at this point. Obviously, one of our main concerns is what is the security of that weapon. Even if Iran as a state possesses it, even if they're not going to use it, the concern is, well, what happens if it's not them that use it, someone else gets their hands on it.
A terrorist.
Part of the framework of this deal is that it is designed to increase that breakout period to at least a year, if not longer.
Okay.
All right, giving us the ability not only to go back to the negotiation table, but to, if it appears that Iran is going gangbusters, we can then look at trying to assemble a multinational coalition to do something about it. And that is as many times as we like to think that the world can move quickly in times of crisis, those things do take time. That's what the framework of the deal is designed to do. Between that and the snapbacks on the economic sanctions that will be released if Iran complies and put back if they don't comply, that's what the deal is designed to try to do, to achieve some stability and a sense of peace while dissuading Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
We only have a few minutes here, but what's your thoughts on 5 years from now? What do you think this will look like? Are you optimistic?
I am more optimistic than I was, let's say, a year ago, when it didn't look like there was going to be a deal at all. The deal is not perfect. No one on either side would claim that it is, but it is a concrete step forward, and it creates an element of re-engagement. If that re-engagement is successful, I think the deal has the opportunity to be successful, and we have the opportunity to de-escalate what's going on.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for all this information.
Happy to be back on.
Yeah, good to have you back on. Hope to see you on MCC TV a lot more. And thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for watching Timely Topics. We've been talking to David Talkie about the Iran deal. And I guess until next time, have a great day.